videos for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatterspodcast1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe. And it feels alright where the worlds collide. Manipulation stands to make us red. What's that you said coming over you? You wish it upon a star. You wish it on a star. You are, you are, you are. You fight back, it's an all-out attack. It feels like I've been taken on the world's machine. Because I want it more than anyone can dream. You look back and it's all in the past. You tell me how you live by all the things you do. Well, you can be yourself, but maybe I'm not you. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all.
Good afternoon, welcome along to NUFC Matters. We are live with an Ask George. How are you, George?
I'm fine. Nice to people to join us this important week for Newcastle United. I'm buzzing, to be honest.
You have, and you got your rattle painted this year.
Yes, it's not far away. I won't rattle it.
No, go on, George. There it is.
Here it is. Imagine going into an away end with 10,000 of them rattling around the place.
It's like an offensive weapon nowadays, to be honest. But
I doubt if they'd let us in with it.
Yeah, no, I don't think you'd get in with that, to be honest. But
I remember once rattling it when you did a thing in the Shiraz bar with Robert Lee, and everybody who dived under the tables and thought it was a machine gun.
Exactly, George, exactly. That's the big thing about those things. They make a hell of a lot of noise. But yeah, that was back in the day. Lots of people did use them. But, you know, big rattles, amazing stuff. Anyway, talking about things that crowds can wave in the air, scarves. Been an announcement today by Newcastle United sponsor Seller. Seller scarves will return. I'll just read this. Club sponsor Seller are providing scarves for Newcastle United fans attending Sunday's Carabao Cup final. The 32,000 Tyne fans at Wembley will find scarves on their seats, which is unlike the 2023 final against Manchester United when alternating blocks of black and white flags were laid out and the opposition fans had scarves. This is the second time Seller have distributed scarves for away travellers, doing so ahead of the FA Cup visit to the Mackems back in January 2024. So, George, great gesture on behalf of our sponsor.
Absolutely. And it sets the scene, doesn't it? For me, it does lots of things, but not least, it gives you a sense how serious these people are about Newcastle United for me and their fans, and adds to the how serious the owners are, because, you know, whenever there's a hiatus, people start saying, "Oh, are they serious? Are they this? Are they that?" Well, I think this kind of thing is a tangible view of a company that's serious about Newcastle and its fans. So I think it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. We'll have a little look at the cup final a little bit later. Don't forget, George and I will be together on the Amigos with the lads on Friday. So our predictions will come a little bit later in the week. Let's first of all look at Monday night's game. We of course did the fans forum as always. Plenty of different views there on the panel. I think most of us felt confident that we could get something at West Ham. Some of us predicted a draw. Some, like Pablo, predicted a 1-0 win. And that's what we got, a 1-0 win. An industrial performance, George, I think is probably the way to describe it.
But it was a performance that was needed to get the cobwebs out of what had happened before, and to get over this doom of Gordon sending off and injuries and all the rest of it. They put in a proper shift. And I've got to say, what delighted me more than anything, although it wasn't a brilliant match, what captain looked like he was on song as well, because I thought he had one of his best games for a very, very long time. I mean, there was a couple of step overs he did during the game, which he hasn't even attempted for the last few weeks, and I was good to see that. And second half, when some people had been sort of quiet in the first half, but people like Jacob Murphy stepped up in the second half, and the two centre halves, despite what people were saying about them, they were nervous about them. They just got stronger as the game went on. I felt more confident as the game went on that it was ours. I mean, I predicted we would win 2-1, but I'm not going to argue about the result. It was a great result in that sense, and vital because if you look at where we are now, we've got the cup final on Sunday, but after that, we've got a run of games that are all winnable, and we've put ourselves really in a box seat for getting a European place if we stick our thumbs up and get cracking, and roll our sleeves up. So the result just adds so much to me, not just for Monday, but for the rest of the season, as far as I'm concerned, and a boost for Sunday as well.
Got a little bit of static at your end, George. I'm not sure whether someone's been put next to your microphone or whatever. But there's we're getting a little bit of interference. We can hear you. I just know for the viewers at home, it might be slightly off-putting, but people can hear you loud and clear. Don't know whether it's a mobile phone or something, but anyway, we'll continue. And if it gets any worse, we'll go to the ads, and maybe you'll have to drop out and come back in. Lots of comments coming in already. Get your questions in for George as well if you can. Horsey Street Henderson says, looking good, George. We used to make them rattles in the joiner shop at the Naval Yard as kids out of Beechwood. Very strong and really noisy.
Well, that one came out of Swan's joiner shop. You're right, and my father wasn't a joiner, but he was the fitter, and he made the jigs to punch out some of the cogs. It was just amazing. It was a production line at lunchtime. They got permission off the managers to make them at lunchtime. I don't know how many thousand were made, but it was incredible. I don't know how many are left, because every time I bring that one out, people think it's a rarity, and I haven't seen many more to match it. But I decided to paint it this year because I had a feeling we might go back to Wembley. So it's there. It's in its prime, as it were.
Okay, let's get your questions in for George, please. We've only got till 2:00, so please get them across. James Slater says, question for George would be that if he was in the dressing room with the lads and about to go onto the pitch on Sunday, what would his team talk be?
Oh, I would remind them of their responsibilities and the history of our club and what the FA Cup means to not just the team, but to the fans, to the city. Always, when we've had a good run in the cup, it's made an enormous impression on the city, on the vibe around the city, and across the whole region, really, because we tend to think about fans as just being people who live in or around Newcastle, but they're not. Newcastle fans are all over the northeast. As I used to discover when I was County Commissioner Scouts in Durham, even when I went to the far south of Durham to Barnard Castle and out to St John on the Cumbrian border, lots of magpies out there, and they will be looking for a performance on Sunday. So I would go out. My team talk would essentially be: don't leave it in the dressing room. Get it all out on the pitch. Give it 100%, and leave nothing to chance. And if you do that, doesn't matter who the opposition is, don't care how good they think they are, we're every chance of winning it. So it would be about reminding the players about their responsibility to the region, to themselves. They have an opportunity to become heroes. I mean, send pictures of the statues outside the stadium and remind them that that's where this foundation comes from, and just send them out on a high, with as much gusto as we can possibly get.
Okay, good question that, James. Thanks. Mark Bayer says, what's George's thoughts on the lack of balance on the left on Monday versus West Ham, with Tino cutting back all the time onto his right and losing momentum in attack? Although rusty, I would rather have Target there, he says.
It's a big debate. The one thing I would not like is that Eddie shifted things around and we ended up with Dan Burn at left back. That's a no-no for me. The thing that in Tino's advantage is that he's quick enough to catch his mistakes where some of the others. My worry about Matt Target is just he hasn't had enough game time. That would worry me. And if I was pushed hard, I might even go for Emil Kraft rather than Matt Target, simply because he's had a bit more game time to be involved, and he never lets us down. Plus, he's fairly comfortable on his left foot. But I think Eddie will risk Tino again. I think, in fact, I'd be surprised if there's much difference between the team we saw on Monday night and the team that we'll see on the pitch.
Okay, James also says, absolutely buzzing about last night's result. 2 hours in, the legs of the Scousers and Trent Alexander-Arnold and perhaps another Crocs. We've had extra days rest. Hope that can be a leveler for Sunday. Do you feel like it was a leveler, George? I mean, they got knocked out of the Champions League. They they went out after extra time and then penalties. And certainly looks like Trent could miss the final.
Well, it's not, it's not a great morale booster, is it, to go out in the way that they did, and to have to exert all that energy into extra time and penalties. So it's going to be in our favour. Trent Alexander-Arnold not playing is an interesting one for me. As a player going forward, he is outstanding. In my opinion, as a full-back, he's not that good. And do we want him on so we can exploit that rather than the other thing? I think we can cope with him going forward. It's the holes he leaves at the back where I wouldn't want to exploit. But him not being there certainly would be a positive for us. There's no question about that.
Okay, question for George. Who do you think should start up front on the left side with Gordon out, says Jason?
Well, my inclination would be to throw a curveball, sorry, I'm thinking out the box. Switching Asuna onto the right and putting Barnes on the left would be possibly how I would go. Or Willock's fit now, and his pace always upsets people. Or what I see other people doing is something I wouldn't be upset about either, and that is putting Big Joe out wide on the left as he's done before to team up with Willock to block that hole on the left. Eddie's got options. I mean, that's one of the pluses I find at the moment with the team. With we're not having in desperate injuries system, we've got enough players on the bench to have options, and so I think that there are plenty to do, and maybe, as I say, maybe that last one with Linton and Joe Willock teaming up to fill the left side in place of Gordon could be a good one.
Okay, the $1 million question, which Eddie Howe has the answer to, is from Tom Dixon. He said, question for George, who would you like Howe to play in goal on Sunday?
Well, Tom, I think you probably know what I'm going to say. The only disappointment about me about Monday night was to see Pope in goal. I've got to be honest. I knew it was coming, and Steve knows because he got a tip off as well. And I've got a contact who has said from weeks now, since the semi-final, that Eddie Howe was going to manage to get Pope in goal for the final because he missed the last one. If that's true, I would be appalled. Martin Dubravka, since he came back in and signed that contract, has done very little wrong, in my opinion, not to be our number one goalkeeper. Pope has every right to be on the bench, and indeed, another curveball. If it went to penalties, I might even actually have the balls to swap Pope for Dubravka for the penalties, because the one area where Pope is really demonstrated over the years he's been here, that he is capable of reading the penalties better. So I'd like to see him involved, but for me, Martin Dubravka could start. He's earned it, in my opinion. So there you are. That's what I think.
Roger, good afternoon. He says, question for George, would you stick with Monday's formation or change it? For example, a J7, Joe Linton, of course, Willock front left, a 5-3-2, and lots of people asking you similar kind of questions. Tom Dixon just says, would you play the same team that beat West Ham on Monday as the same team for the final?
No, I think I've already said the goalkeeper would change, but I'm also, with a team like Liverpool, I would be inclined to have a go at the five at the back like we did against Arsenal. The formation and the way we played then was absolutely crucial to us getting through. And yes, Gordon's not there, but I think Willock's pace and Joe Linton on that left side could easily fill that hole. So I would be making changes, but not wholesale changes. Maybe Willock and Big Joe operating on the left. I mean, I've got to say at some stage in the game, I'm not saying he would start. Having seen his performance on the right side at Birmingham, I would find space for young Asula to have some time on the right side. Particularly, for example, if the Liverpool fullbacks are in trouble, his energy and pace would be a good option to back us up, I think.
Lots of people obviously got opinions about this goalkeeping scenario.
Yeah.
Pope wasn't even tested, says Darren, against the poor West Ham team.
No.
Dubs got us to the final, so he should play in it, says Andy. And Darren says he would start with Dubravka. And it goes on and on and on. Lots of different things. James Slater says, watch Pope on Monday night. He looks like a shell of what he was 2 or 3 years ago. His kickings all over the place, just generally looks shaky. Paul with the formation says we could have gone 5-3-2, but Botman's injury has scuppered that. And Mark Byers says, agree about Osula. I think that could be Eddie's curveball. He'd give energy and a surprise element and would be bang up for to prove himself.
Yeah.
And how many people were dropping bricks every time the ball went to his feet, says Roger with regards to Pope. And Pope had 2 straight shots at him versus West Ham, and he still managed to spill one. That's the thing. It's down to it is down to nervousness. People do feel like, they do feel a bit nervy when he's in goal nowadays, don't they, George?
For what it's worth, I think the back four look happier when Dubravka's at the back behind them than when Pope's there. That just must be me. I mean, I fell out with one of my contacts over Pope, and I'll tell you why. I was having a bit of a rant about Pope, and the guy I know said, well, you keep going on about him kicking the ball into touch. I said, yes, I do. I find that atrocious for a professional. Well, do you not realise he probably does that on purpose? I said, what on purpose? What do you mean? Well, if he gets it out higher up the pitch, we'll get a throw in their half. And I just laughed. If we're any bloody good at throw-ins, it might have a story, but the throw-ins were hopeless. We haven't got a system of any kind, so for that to be an excuse to keep Pope in the team was just beyond the pale for me. No, I think I like Pope. He's done well for us, but I think that last injury's damaged his confidence more than we know, and it sometimes shows. And as I say, from a fan watching the games, the back four look happier when Dubravka's behind them.
I mean, Dave loves Pope, defends him in the chat. He says, I think it's hilarious we make out we're the best fans in the league when Pope's been attacked every single show for weeks. Nobody's attacking him, Dave. I think we're all giving an opinion on the goalkeeper, and you have to make these decisions. Eddie Howe has to make these decisions, just as you have to make the decisions as to whether you play Callum Wilson or Isak, or whether you play Sven Botman and against Shaw and Byrne if they were all fit, or if you play Tino and Trippier at right back if everybody was fit. So it's all about opinions. Nobody dislikes Pope to that point. I think we just all have an opinion. I think you're concerned about him and concerned about the lad, but we're also concerned about the cup final because we're jealous. We're not jealous. We're greedy little ducks like George is. We want to win the bloody thing. We don't just want to go along and have turn up this time. We want to go and win it, and got to pick your best team on form. And I would say Dubravka was the best keeper at this moment in time at the club. But I've said before, Dave, it's very, very narrow margins.
Yes,
it's narrow margins. But I personally think, having watched him week after week, and I'm sure you do as well, Dave, I just feel he slows the game down. When Newcastle are playing that attacking, high-intensified attacking game, I think Pope slows it down a bit. And his distribution, he rolls it and throws it better than some people kick it. That's one thing you could say in his favour. But I just think Dubravka has been the better keeper. But it's up to Eddie Howe. He knows what he says. And Dave goes on to say, I want my keeper to stop goals, not ping 30-yarders. It is, as Mark says as well, Dubs sets up attacks quicker, which could be vital on the counter versus Liverpool, which is my point. My point exactly. Paul reckons the Pope's finished at the top level. He really doesn't instill confidence at all. And Paul says this time last year, Dubravka was getting pelters. And 100%, that just shows that things can change, can't they, George? Things can change.
Absolutely. Well, I confess, his attitude when he went on loan to Manchester United nearly finished him with me. I couldn't have cared less if he never came back for a while. But what happens after that in life generally, but in football particularly, when a player demonstrates as he has, he's taken this chance he's been given by the club and Howe with both hands. And for me, he hasn't done anything wrong. Not enough wrong to immediately change him. Don't get me wrong. I'm preferring him to Pope. I wouldn't be tearing my hair out if. Sorry, I can't tear my hair out. But I wouldn't be tearing my hair out if Pope happened to be in goal, because he's a good goalkeeper as well. All I'm saying is that A, I prefer Dubravka at the moment, and B, I think he's earned it, and that's all. That's my opinion at the moment.
Yeah, I think most people accept that in the chat as well. And I would agree, Dean. If it goes to penalties and Pope's in goal, we'll get beat. I think the opposite to you, Dean. I think if Pope goes in goal, would win on penalties. He can't dive a certain way, and Liverpool will know that. I think his penalty record stands up better sometimes than his games in goal record. But look, it's all about opinions. And Dave says, I only defend him because 18 months ago Dubravka was getting it and Pope was world class. It just seems fickle. Listen, completely understand where you're coming from, Dave. Opinions change and form changes. And yes, fans are more fickle. James says, I agree with George. Dubravka has been pretty much faultless since he's been back in the side. He deserves to start on Sunday for me. Paul says, nothing personal. We need our best players on the pitch. Simple. And Andy says you've got to go on form. Mark says it's not bad support, it's opinion. We look pretty daft praising a player who isn't playing well. I'm sure he's got our support, but Pope isn't above criticism just because he's a pro footballer. And Dean says Pope's on house Christmas card list. It goes on. Dave says, I don't think either are clear of the other and think we should be moving on, not back to someone that wasn't good enough 18 months ago, but we should be behind whoever Eddie picks, which is well said.
Absolutely.
Darren says Pope's movement's not the same. He's slow at diving of late. He goes down in slow motion. Mark says if Eddie picks Pope, I think Longstaff must have sold Pope those alleged photographs that Mark keeps going on about. You are being mischievous, Mark, as usual. What was that, his penalty record before injury? Dean, it's a good point. Yeah, potentially it could have been. Mark reckons that Eddie might have a rabbit up his sleeve and surprise us all on Monday with a change that we haven't seen before, George.
What, for the final?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've mentioned one, and that's Osula. I thought his performance on the right at Birmingham, he really did give those fullbacks a heck of a time. So that's one. There are others, of course, who haven't featured strongly, and what a better time for people to sort of stake their claim in club history. And is a time that Barnes earned his corn, for example, that sort of thing. So there's lots of options that Eddie's got. And my point before was, isn't it good that he's got options? I'd have been very, very troubled if we'd had the bare bones that we had, last season. Where this season we actually got one or two people on the bench who might make a difference. So you don't know. If he plays the five at the back, does he leave Isak up on his own, or does he try? We've never seen Isak and Wilson together for very long, for example, and let Isak drift right. And Wilson up the middle. There are things he could try, and it wouldn't surprise me if he did, because he's the thinker, Eddie. He's not going to dismiss it all. He's going to think about it very hard.
Mark reckons that he might have a man marking rule for Tino or for Shaw to do. When out of possession.
That's possible, because we all know who the real killer is for them, and that's Salah. He's the last couple of times that Hall's played him, he played him quite well, but he's still managed to get goals. So yeah, that is another issue that could be, and I've said on here and other parts of the channel before that Fabian Schär is a better footballer than some people think, and if you watch his performances as a deep midfielder for Switzerland, they're quite classy, really, and maybe that's an option, a possibility. The other one is having somebody just said Tino might be. Well, Tino has the pace to go with any of them. So yeah, it's just about options and how he wants to play. But I'm just relieved that we've got those options. I'd have been worried if we hadn't.
Yeah, I would agree, mate. 100%. It's it could be worse. It could be worse. We managed to keep players away from injury as well on Monday, which was just as important. But lots to be positive about going into Sunday's game. Of course, Mark said Monday. That's because it will be Monday when Mark watches the final in the I presume. Okay, quick break. Back after this. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. Find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickies.co.uk, email info@mrvickies.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. A A big thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. 2 crew, driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. All excursions included. Find them at their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email them at beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. You can find them at their website, media-arts.co.uk. If you want to listen to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify, and your other podcast providers. If you want to help support the channel, hit the thumb up, which is the like button. Click share to share to your other social medias. Click join to join the channel. And click the subscribe button. We've also got links in our description for buy us a coffee and to be a Patreon member. Some events coming up. An afternoon with Sir Les Ferdinand, 6th of April, 12 till 4. Tickets available from ticketmaster.co.uk. No Covers takes place at the Cluny, Lilac Lane, Ryder and the Chris Norris Band. Tickets from theclooney.com or by telephone in 0191 230 4474. An evening with Steve Howie and Steve Watson, hosted by Joe Allen, takes place at the Tyneside Irish Centre on the 27th of June. Tickets for that are from newcastlelegends.com. An evening with Peter Beardsley and Chris Waddle takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House on the 23rd of January 2026. Box office 0844 246 1000 or website tynetheatreandoperahouse.tv. An evening with Bad Manners takes place on Friday the 30th of January 2026 and tickets available from ticketmaster.co.uk. And we have copies of The Entertainers 1992 to 1997, Kevin Keegan's Legacy, available from newcastlelegends.com. And we've got copies of that book signed by Peter Beardsley and Lee Clark. If you go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk, that is where you can buy them. We've got 20 of them signed at the event. There's the website address, so get yourself onto there. Don't forget as well, if you want to contact us, nufcmatters1892@gmail.com is the address as well. I'll leave that up for a little bit longer. And we do have this, which we've been asked to advertise, which is from a guy called Danny Mitchell. He is doing an evening with John Beresford at the Crown Plaza in Newcastle on Friday, the 25th of July. It is 7:30 until 10:30 p.m. It's a VIP meet and greet is £35 and the standard tickets are £25. All tickets include pie, peas and a beer. And you just need to hold your phone, your smartphone, over that QR code and that will take you straight there for tickets. And as most of you know, I am an ambassador for dementia. I'm now an ambassador for Age UK. North Tyneside. Something slightly different. We are doing a science fiction convention in the Tyneside Irish Club, a Blake 7 one. It is a Blake 7 convention. You can come along and meet some of the stars of that iconic 1970s and 80s programme. Jan Chappell, Sally Nivette, Brian Croucher, Sasha Mitchell will all be there, all stars of the show. Matt Irvin will be coming along with quite a few of the models from the TV series. And Johnny Ainsworth, who was one of the guys who is behind the new Big Finish productions, which have seen lots of the former cast members get back to do radio and CD-style productions of the series. So it's 10 till 4. Tickets are £20 and you can get them from our website, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk, with all proceeds from that weekend and that day, going across to the Dementia Centre. So get yourself on board with that as well. Mark says, I'm currently 5 hours behind the UK, so the match will be on the Sunday. No idea why I said Monday. I was wondering. I thought you maybe moved to Australia or something. Maybe I've got subconscious drunk in premature celebration of our cup win. I hope yourself.
Absolutely.
Darren says he's gone ahead and ordered himself a programme. I hope it turns up by the weekend. Stephen George, I hope you're both well. Thanks for the show. It's always a great watch, says Jules. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jules.
Thank you very much, Jules. Seller are proven to be a great commercial partner. Not only does the design look great on the shirt, it's also a far cry from the dross of Funny 88 and Wonga.
We should remind people as well, Steve, that the Seller sponsorship would have been a 10 million more if it hadn't been for the interference of the English Premier League.
Exactly, yeah. And this goalkeeping thing just rumbled on in the chat. Both great keepers, says Dean. Dub's in better form currently, not to mention any of our other 15 keepers. We might sign another one in the summer, Dean. Tom Dixon says, Pope's kicking isn't that good now, which is a simple statement. Correct.
Well, I always laugh when we do those for the days and John Ruddy's name comes up. I would be talking about him for 20 bloody years.
He's nearly as bad as the 80s when John Burridge was the 80s and 90s.
Yes.
Darren Lee says if Pope starts, you can see Liverpool just keep trying to long range shots, and 9 out of 10 more than likely get in the net if Pope starts, says Darren. So again, continuing to that. James says Pope hasn't looked the same player since the shoulder injury. It can happen to any pro, and confidence can be dented, and it's just a shame it's happened to him, as when he joined us, he was class. 100% he was. No doubt in that at all. In the last meeting, if Dub started, we would have lost 1-0, as Pope should have stopped the first Liverpool goal, says Darren. Dean reckons Tonali could play a big part. He says, I'm praying Tonali runs the show at the final on Sunday, become a hero. And you know what? He's been fantastic this season, George, hasn't he?
Absolutely. And one of my favourites, I think you know that, the number of times I've come home and felt that Tonali was man of the match. I mean, even against Brighton, it was a horrible day. But in the second half of extra time, there was a period when it seemed it was Tonali against Brighton. He was involved so much. And he has all classical things. I mean, he has beautiful, great pace. He's one of the fastest in the Premiership for a midfielder. That's incredible. And he obviously has the lungs because he covers every blade of grass, and he has the skill to go with it. And the other thing I like about him is as formerly part of my career as a defender, is that if he gets face to face with somebody 1-to-1, very rarely do they get past him. If he doesn't actually take the ball off them, he shepherds them back and shepherds them out and doesn't let them pass. So, I think Sandro Tonali could be a big player for us. I'm convinced of that. And if they let him, I still puzzle why somebody who takes penalties for his country can't take, not penalties, dead balls for his country, can't take dead balls for Newcastle United. That puzzles me greatly, but that's up to Eddie, of course, and our dead ball specialist that we've got now, apparently.
Yeah, it is strange. It is strange. Only Eddie Howe will know the reason behind that. Losing Gordon, Hall and Botman's a huge blow for Sunday, but you have to play with the cards you've been dealt. Liverpool are going to be feeling fatigued themselves after last night, which is very
it goes for everybody, doesn't it? That's likely to happen. But I'm still up for it and positive in every way to see we get a victory on Sunday, and it gives others a chance to make a name for themselves. That's how you've got to approach it, in my view. It's ever was thus. I've got to say, we're going to this match, I think, fairly strongly as second favourites out of two. Well, it's always been like that. Even when we won the ones in the 50s, we were the second, hugely underdogs. And the first one, it was we shouldn't have turned up according to the press and the pundits, but we went on to win it. So I'm still confident enough that we can do a game. It's a one-off, and let's give it a go.
Mark says, remember, Seller is Ales spelled backwards. It's appropriate because I'm sure lots of ales will be sunk at the weekend.
Certainly will.
I think you're right. Yeah, certainly think you're right. George, I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask this to Gibbo tomorrow night when we're live at 6 o'clock. What's it like, George, for a Newcastle fan to win something?
Yeah, I mean, I was just a kid in the 50s, but it still meant so much to my family, and the euphoria around the place, and in the workplace, at school, everything was just so hyper. It was incredible, and I think the one I was only 9-year-old, the 51 win against Blackpool, the whole country was against her, because Blackpool had England's golden boy, Stanley Matthews, who was 36 in that team. And the only honour he'd never won was a cup winners medal. So, and the passed us in the league. And that's another debating point, because in my house, the Chicken Road Academy, they all thought we threw the league to get to the cup because of the money. But the atmosphere when they come back, the victory parade, they never estimate these crowds right. I mean, by the time we got home, my lot were talking about there being, over 500,000 people in Newcastle that day, the day they came back. So that has an enormous impact on the place. And for about a month afterwards, all the shipyard managers used to say production was up 20%. And I suspect that was probably true, because it gave everybody such a boost. So yeah, it was magic. Even when it come to the Fairs Cup win, that did a tremendous amount of thing. Where we really do have a right to be proud as supporters of Newcastle United. Remember the celebration when we come back after getting thumped off Liverpool in Supermax Day. And I think you'll know, Steve, that Supermax admits that celebration made him cry, because he couldn't believe that that's the celebration they got for losing. What the hell would it have been like if they'd won? And I know that did affect Supermax, because I've talked to him about it. And he said he just couldn't believe that those buses were having to push themselves through huge crowds of people, and they were the losers. And when he compared it with what Liverpool were getting as the winners, it was difficult to see who was the winners. So it has such a boost to the whole area, not just the team, not just the supporters, but it lasts, and it lasts a long time. It lasts a long time.
Yeah, certainly will. Let's hope it happens, in this weekend, and we all get an opportunity to see it. Darren says 43 years as a fan, it would be good to see the club lift a trophy in my lifetime. Rob Maltman, our designer, good afternoon. He says, I can't imagine the party seeing Newcastle win a trophy. Us fans celebrate a team that came second in the league. A trophy, it will go down in history. Paul's got in early with a team prediction. He reckons it's going to be Dubravka, Target, Tino, Byrne and Shaw, Tonali, Joelinton, Bruno, Barnes, Murphy and Isaac. He says, you heard it here first. Lots of people with lots of ideas. Tom would love to see a Geordie get the winner. Would love to see Lewis Miley score the winner at Wembley on Sunday.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
That would be awesome. And Tom says, question for George, do you think Newcastle will look in the Italian market again for more players like Tonali?
Oh, I'd be surprised if they're not already looking, Tom, because there are some in the under-23 team that Tonali captains. There are some other young players in there who are absolutely scintillating at going forward and would add something to us, I think. I'd be amazed if they're not already looking. Our ex-sporting director, who's now ex-Manchester United sporting director, he clearly was doing work in that area. And the other thing is, of course, is that the one thing Paul Mitchell has got is a encyclopedic knowledge of European football. So I would be amazed if we're not at least having a peep. It would be nice to see some other talent come in, because as I say, just looking at, I watched Tonali's under-23 games, and there's some superb talent in there, both at the back and at the front.
Yeah, Mark Bayer says, I'd love to see our winner come from a Virgil van Dijk own goal.
True.
A winner would be good. James Slater says, question for George, will Eddie get the keys to the city if he wins the final?
Well, he certainly will get recognition, if from nowhere else, from from very loyal fans. He will make a name for himself just winning the trophy. It's got to be. You know, we're so desperate to get this monkey off our backs that we haven't won any for so long. So the man that does it's going to be a hero wherever he does. You know, it's the thing about Eddie is that is always positive to me. He's like some of our better managers. He's bought into the Geordie thing. He's bought into all of that. You know, he realizes that being manager of Newcastle United is a 24/7 job, and he accepts it. I mean, I live within sight of the training ground, and at 6:30 in the morning when I see the lights go on, I know it's bloody Eddie Howe. That's how into it he is. What sort of family life the poor lad must have, I don't know. And if you see him in the supermarket, he can't stop for enough pictures and things like that. So yeah, he will deserve all the recognition he gets if he brings that trophy home. And I you know, he deserves all of it, every bit of it, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I would agree. He deserves the freedom of the city at the very least. Whatever happens, that would be fantastic. Darren, I didn't hear Mitchell's interview on TalkSport. I very rarely listen to that programme, to be fair, that station. But according to Darren, he says from Mitchell's interview, it sounded like he's building a team to be up there in the next 5 years. He says, I only caught a bit, really. Sounded like building for the next 5 years to have a team to challenge for trophies, etc. I mean, that's good.
I have to say, to be honest, people have been seeing all these young kids being brought in. Our 18-year-olds at the moment are knocking spots on everybody. They're banging goals in 4, 5, 6 a match, and a lot of those are kids that have been brought in during this early part of Mitchell's reign. So if he's if he's starting like that, then good luck to him. Let bring it on. Is my attitude.
Yeah, I mean, we're having a young striker on the bench on Monday night, Sean Neve, George, 17 years of age. I mean, what he must be feeling being just in and around the first team squad. He must be bouncing with that, George.
Oh, Steve, I know I was only a kid and I didn't ever get any very far, but I was in that dressing room, and I remember, for example, well, names I remember my friends that played with me in the ends. George Dalton, Joe Butler, when they got their first stiff of the first team, and when they came back to play with us again, it G'd all us up. We all got adrenaline out of it. You know, if the attitude was, well, if he can do it, why can't I do it? And these were lads I'd played football with from school right up to playing for Newcastle United, and they eventually got professional contracts. Unfortunately, when I was on the verge of that, somebody kicked me knee off, so that was the end of that. Yeah, it has an impact, and I'm glad to see when youngsters like that get on. And what Eddie Howe has shown with young Miley, for example, is if you're good enough, you're old enough. There's no question about that. He hasn't held young Miley back because he's too young. In fact, at one stage, he played so many consecutive games last year. People were saying, "Is he going to wear him out? You know, is he getting too much?" But he hasn't, and he's protected him. And of course, while he's been off, they've boosted his physical up. So if this young striker's in that mould as well, and as I say, if you look at the record of the younger teams at the moment, which includes some of these teams, and that boy that you're talking about, they're scoring goals for toffee, and what 4-5 out against Stoke last night or the night before. It's like you, I'm glad to see a youngster in the mix, and if Eddie thinks that much of him, wouldn't that be a fascinating thing to do, to be sitting on the bench at Wembley for him as well? But I know the impact it has on the youth dressing room. It does. When your mates get involved, you feel involved, and it spurs you to have a go yourself, and it is important. It is important.
I mean, yeah, we've had two goalkeepers on the bench for some unknown reason for best part of the season. So, far rather have somebody like young Sean Neave on there.
Precisely.
That's how Michael Owen started. Michael Owen was a 17-year-old kid, 16, 17-year-old kid. And he scored on his debut and hit the ground running. That's how Alan Shearer started at
Southampton.
Southampton, a hat trick. So you just never know what's around the corner for anybody making their debut at that age. He could be the next best thing. And good luck to the kid. James says Mitchell is the right man for the job. The club hired the best and gave him a few windows. He will show what he's all about. There are some gems in League One, and I'm hoping he can get us some of them. John Askew says, I think the thing on TalkSport showed a clip from an interview last summer. Simon Jordan was suggesting we're not allowed to spend properly. He's become a bit of a fan of Newcastle, hasn't he, Simon Jordan, these days? George, he seems to, he's defending Newcastle more.
Yes, he's changed his tune because I think, like a lot of people that voted like turkeys for Christmas for the rules that they were persuaded were good by the click at the top. They're now realizing it's affecting them. West Ham are all for it. not all for it now because they cannot boost their own team because of the state they're in. And he had Jim Ratcliffe last night. That was an interview worth hearing. I don't know if you heard it, Steve, admitting that if he hadn't have done some of the financial things he'd done, Manchester United would have run out of money in November.
Wow. This
November. I mean, can you imagine? Well, we're above that. We're well above that. So, and I agree with them now that I see what Mitchell's about. Because at first I wasn't, I wasn't a fan. But now I see what he's about. I've read a bit more about him. His knowledge of European stuff is encyclopedic and second to none. And I think we'll reap the benefit of that. I really do. So, and we need to. People should remember when they criticise Eddie Howe and the staff and all the rest of it. Remember, Eddie Howe's still playing with 9 players that couldn't even get a bloody game off Steve Bruce. And yet we play with them regularly at the moment. So Eddie Howe's, in that sense, saved us a bloody fortune, because they would have all had to have been replaced. So Mitchell's got a job to do and good luck to him. And if he sees players that'll take us forward for 5 years, well, fine, let's get them in.
Darren says, from Mitchell's take yesterday, between the lines, it must be the youth route for a long-time success. Yeah, well, it's good to see him building the foundations, not building it on sand, which is what the Entertainers was built on, really. It was built on sand. John Askew says, we definitely need a quality youth setup going forward, but both Eddie and the fans deserve a great window this summer. Well said. That young Harrison we got in looks good. Yeah, not much being said about him, but he's still doing the business. I think, Tom, whether he's good enough for first team,
Well, going back to the little bit of youth stuff that I have wind of and hear about from people that live near me, they speak very highly of him, but he doesn't even get on the bench at the moment. But I'm sure when he's right, Eddie will have him in.
Yeah, Darren Lee says, man, you are out of money, but out of the blue with 2 billion on a circus tent of a stadium, which looks like something from Butlins.
Well, it's 2 billion off us, though. It's not their bloody money. They want the government to pay for it. And if this programme's never political, well, I'm going to make it political. Write your MP and tell them to build a stadium in Manchester. How about paying for ours in Newcastle as well?
John's asking here, he says, George, in the light of the ground news from Old Trafford, will we need to be a bit more ambitious on new ground capacity?
No, I don't think so. I think what they're trying to get a club ground out of their saying that it's the Wembley of the North and all that sort of tripe. What we need is a proper stadium for Newcastle United. And with the demand for season tickets and corporate interest and all the rest of it, I think the numbers that are being talked about are sensible. I think the 100,000 stadium for a club, even our club, would on occasions be they have swathes of empty seats, and that's no good. We want a stadium that's filled, not a stadium that's occasionally filled. So I think they're in about the right area, and I think I love Newcastle dearly, but I think we'd struggle to fill 100,000 every week.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that design either. If that's Manchester United Stadium, that's horrendous.
No. Well, this is Ratcliffe. I've no doubt he's had his own architects and his design team at the car company and the boat company doing all this stuff for him. But I found that interview horrendous, absolutely horrendous. If I was a Manchester United fan, I'd be crying in my tea tonight, I promise you.
Okay, it's been a great show. Thank you to everybody in the chat for their questions. We did catch you out a little bit by having an afternoon show. Oh, Jeff's joined us late. He's asked a question. We'll fit that in, Jeff, for you. Are you concerned about younger people getting access to games, George? I mean,
yes.
Interesting. Well, it's interesting. I'll tell you, I don't think it's as bad as you think, Jeff. I mean, some clubs up and down the country are taking away like the young person option. Newcastle have frozen the prices on young kids for season tickets. I don't think that's. I think they're encouraging the youngsters rather than discouraging.
And the other thing they do, Steve, is that they invite young clubs. See, on Sunday there were about a dozen football clubs there.
Yeah,
with the players in the ground, obviously being given tickets to go. Now that I think that's absolutely fantastic. But I think it would generally in football, not just Newcastle United, I do worry about the attitudes towards young people and the disappearing of the concession tickets is crazy. I mean, absolutely. But I think we're in a good place at the moment.
Great stuff. Peter, I'll give you the last word. He says, you build a circus tent to watch the clowns at Man United.
Well, absolutely.
George, thanks for doing it today. I will see you on Friday night at 5 o'clock for a cup final special.
Yes. Pleasure as always. And thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for your questions. Look forward to meeting you around St. James's Park or wherever. Do come and speak. It's always a pleasure.
Get the rattle out, George, says Tom.
All right, here we go. You ready for it?
Fantastic. If you're watching on Twitter or watching on any other form of social media, please get yourself over to YouTube, search NUFC Matters, hit the subscribe button. We do 7 shows a week. I'm back tomorrow night, 6 o'clock with Gibbo. See you then.